Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back in time and across the water, not on a ship, but in a canoe, gliding through the ingenious floating gardens of the Aztec Empire. You're here to drift off to the story of a lost agricultural wonderland, a place of impossible fertility built on a lake, and to discover the strange and forgotten fruits that once grew in its rich, dark soil. You're standing on the slope of a mountain, looking down into a vast basin ringed by the dark silhouettes of dormant volcanoes. The air is thin and cool, carrying the scent of pine needles and damp earth. Below you, a network of 5 lakes shimmers under a pale, high-altitude sun, a turquoise and silver tapestry stretching to the horizon. In the very center, like a jewel, is the city of Tenochtitlan. Statistically speaking, if you were actually here in the year 1500, your tourist trip would probably end with your heart being rather unceremoniously introduced to Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war. So let's just keep this a gentle, sleepy dream for now. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I love seeing where you're all listening from, so feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see this little community stretching across so many time zones. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Take a slow, deep breath. Or, well, try to. At over 7,300 feet above sea level, the air in the Valley of Mexico is noticeably thin. If you feel like you just ran a half marathon after walking up a gentle slope, don't worry. That's just the standard welcome package. Your lungs adjust eventually. For now, you just feel a pleasant lightness in your head as you gaze down at one of the most remarkable landscapes in human history. From up here, it looks like someone spilled 5 giant, shimmering puddles into a bowl made of mountains. An artistic choice, really, and a beautiful one at that. This is the heart of the Aztec world. The 5 lakes, Zumpango, Saltacan, Texcoco, Xochimilco, and Chalco, are all interconnected, forming a massive hydrological system that dictates the rhythm of life here. The city you see glittering in the distance, Tenochtitlan, is built on an island in the middle of the largest of these, Lake Texcoco. It's a metropolis that shouldn't exist, a defiance of geography. It's connected to the shores you're standing on by massive ruler-straight causeways that seem to float on the water's surface. As the wind whispers through the pine trees around you, it carries faint, indistinct sounds from the valley floor. You can't quite make them out, but you can imagine the hum of 250,000 people living and working down there. The glitter you see isn't just sunlight on water. It's the reflection off the whitewashed adobe walls of temples, palaces, and homes. The great temple, the Templo Mayor, rises from the city's heart, a man-made mountain of stone dedicated to the gods of war and rain. You start to walk down a well-worn path, the ground soft with fallen pine needles under your feet. The air warms slightly as you descend, and the scent of the lake itself begins to reach you. A complex smell of fresh water, algae, and something vaguely salty. Historians still argue whether the lakes were primarily freshwater or brackish. The truth seems to be a complicated yes to both. The southern lakes, Chalco and Xochimilco, were fed by freshwater springs, creating an ideal environment for agriculture. But the Great Lake Texcoco, in the center, was the low point of the basin, with no natural outlet. Water flowed in, evaporated under the intense sun, and left its mineral salts behind, making the water brackish and alkaline. This hydrological puzzle was the central challenge and the greatest opportunity for the Aztec people. As you get closer to the lakeshore, you notice strange, dark patches on the surface of the water, especially near the edges. It's algae, a blue-green bloom of spirulina. You see a man in a small flat-bottomed boat meticulously scraping this green scum from the water with a fine meshed net. He paddles back to shore and spreads the green paste onto flat clay tiles to dry in the sun. This is Tenochtitlan. Once it's dry, it's scraped off and pressed into little cakes. One of the first Europeans to see this would later describe it as a kind of green cheese that the locals ate with gusto. It's incredibly rich in protein, a vital supplement in a diet that wasn't always heavy on meat. It was basically the world's first protein bar, just a bit more pond scummy than the ones you'd find at the gym today. It's a perfect example of how the people here saw the lake not as an obstacle, but as a pantry. Every part of it, from its fish and frogs to its birds and even its scum, was a gift to be harvested. The sun is beginning to dip lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet that reflect perfectly in the still water. The volcanoes that ring the valley, including the two great snow-capped peaks of Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl, are turning a soft rose gold. The path opens up now, and you find yourself at the edge of the Great Lake. The water laps gently at the shore, a quiet, rhythmic sound. Before you, stretching out into the shimmering water, is the beginning of one of the great causeways, a wide, raised road that seems to march impossibly across the surface of the lake towards the city. It's your path forward into the heart of this water world. You take your first step onto the causeway, leaving the solid earth of the lakeshore behind. The ground beneath you is firm, a wide avenue of packed earth and stone flanked by rubble. It feels impossibly solid, a declaration of human will imposed upon the water. This is the Iztapalapa Causeway, one of the three main arteries that tether the island city of Tenochtitlan to the mainland. It's a marvel of engineering, stretching for nearly 5 miles in a near-perfect straight line towards the southern gate of the capital. It's wide enough for 10 people to walk comfortably side by side, which is more than you can say for most modern city sidewalks during rush hour. The sun continues its slow descent, and the light on the water is magical, turning the ripples into liquid gold. On either side of you, the lake stretches out, its surface dotted with countless canoes. Some are small, poled by a single person fishing with a net. Others are larger, laden with goods, moving silently and efficiently through the water. These are the lifeblood of the city, the equivalent of delivery trucks and taxis ferrying everything from food and building materials to people. The causeway is for travelers on foot, but the canals are the real highways. You fall into a comfortable pace, joining a steady stream of people moving in both directions. The murmur of conversation is all around you, spoken in the soft, musical cadence of Nahuatl. You don't understand the words, but the tones are familiar. The laughter of children, the haggling of merchants, the quiet greetings between friends. You're sharing the road with all sorts of people. There are merchants carrying everything you can imagine. Cages of live turkeys that seem to be loudly complaining about the commute. Porters with impossibly large bundles of white cotton strapped to their backs with a tump line, a simple band across their forehead. You see men carrying stacks of gleaming obsidian blades that you definitely don't want to trip into. It's like watching the world's most interesting and slightly hazardous parade. The construction of this road is staggering when you stop to think about it. Archaeologists still debate the exact construction methods of the causeways, but the general principle is known. They would drive 2 parallel lines of thick wooden stakes, essentially giant piles deep into the soft lake bed. The space between these wooden retaining walls was then filled with millions of tons of earth and rock, packed down layer by layer until it rose above the water level. It was a monumental undertaking, accomplished without beasts of burden, wheeled vehicles, or metal tools. Just human ingenuity and an incredible amount of organized labor. These causeways didn't just connect the city, they protected it. The largest of them, the Nezahualcóyotl Dike, was a 10-mile-long wall that ran north to south, separating the fresh waters of Chalco and Xochimilco from the salty waters of Lake Texcoco, creating the perfect conditions for the agriculture we've come to see. You continue walking, the city growing larger and more detailed with every step. You can now distinguish individual buildings, the stepped pyramids of smaller temples, and the flat roofs of the sprawling residential compounds. You notice something odd about the causeway ahead. There's a gap in it. As you get closer, you see that the stone and earth road simply stops, and a wide wooden bridge spans the gap to the other side. You walk across it, the timber thick and solid under your feet. Looking down, you can see the lake water flowing freely beneath you. This is another stroke of Aztec genius. These gaps and removable bridges were built into the causeways at regular intervals. In times of peace, they allowed canoe traffic to pass through without having to go all the way around. But in times of war, the bridges could be lifted. This simple act would turn the causeway from a highway into a trap, stranding an invading army between deep water and the city's defenders. It's a brilliant defensive strategy. It's also the ultimate excuse for being late to a meeting. Sorry, I missed the sacrificial ceremony, boss. The bridge was out. Literally. The air is growing cooler now, and a gentle mist is beginning to rise from the surface of the lake, softening the edges of the world. The sounds from the city are clearer now, a low, constant thrum of life. You hear the rhythmic beat of a drum from a distant temple, a sound that is both celebratory and vaguely ominous. The smell of wood smoke hangs in the air, mingling with the scent of flowers from a passing cargo canoe so heavily laden with marigolds that it looks like a floating patch of sunset. The journey on the causeway is not just a commute. It's a transition. You are leaving the natural world of the shore and the mountains behind and entering a world built entirely by human hands, a city that has tamed the water and bent it to its will. The sky is now a deep indigo, and the first stars are beginning to appear. Ahead, the lights of Tenochtitlan are beginning to glow. Not electric lights, but the warm, flickering orange of thousands of pine resin torches and household fires, reflecting in the dark water and promising a different world at the end of this long, straight road. You've reached the end of the causeway, stepping through a fortified gateway and into Tenochtitlan itself. The transition is immediate and overwhelming. The relative quiet of the long walk is shattered by the vibrant, pulsing soundscape of a metropolis. The air, thick with wood smoke and the sharp, tantalizing scent of roasting chilies, hums with the energy of 250,000 souls. Torches mounted on the walls of buildings cast a warm, flickering light, making shadows dance and giving the white stucco walls a soft, living glow. You are standing on a wide, paved avenue that continues the straight line of the causeway directly into the heart of the city. But this is not a city of streets in the way you understand it. This is a city of canals. The main avenues, like the one you're on, are flanked by waterways with footpaths on either side. But branching off from these main arteries is a dizzying network of smaller canals that serve as the city's true streets. They crisscross the island, separating the residential compounds, or calpuli, and leading to bustling marketplaces and quiet temple courtyards. The whole city is laid out on a grid, with straight streets and canals that would make a modern city planner weep with joy. It's like Venice, but with a much better municipal government and significantly more pyramids. The buildings themselves are impressive. Most are single-story with flat roofs made of timber and thatch, but they are built to last, with sturdy adobe walls plastered and painted in brilliant white or deep red. The homes of the nobility are grander, multi-roomed structures built around serene inner courtyards filled with flowers. And above it all, in the sacred precinct at the city's center, the great pyramids loom, their dark shapes blotting out the stars. Historians and urban planners still debate how the Aztecs managed the monumental task of supplying fresh water to such a massive island population. The lake water itself was too brackish to drink. The solution was another feat of brilliant engineering, a massive aqueduct. Two large stone and ceramic pipes, side by side, ran for miles from the freshwater springs at Chapultepec on the mainland, carrying a constant supply of clean water right into the city center. The dual pipe system was clever. While one channel was being cleaned or repaired, the other could continue to supply the city, ensuring the flow was never interrupted. From public fountains and reservoirs, the water was then distributed throughout the city by porters and in canoes. As you wander away from the main thoroughfare, you find yourself on the edge of a smaller, quieter canal. Here, the sounds of the city are more intimate. You hear the soft dip and pull of a paddle as a canoe glides past, its wake gently rocking the boats moored along the banks. You hear the low voices of a family talking inside their home, the sound carrying clearly over the water. You notice the clean, swept paths and the distinct lack of, well, garbage. In an age when European cities were notoriously filthy, Tenochtitlan was remarkably clean. A dedicated corps of about 1,000 public employees swept and washed the public thoroughfares every single day, and the canals weren't just for transport. They were part of a sophisticated waste management system. You see a large, slow-moving barge being pulled along, stopping at houses where residents bring out their waste to be collected. This refuse wasn't dumped, it was carefully transported back to the mainland to be used as fertilizer. The canoes are doing everything from garbage collection to grocery delivery. It's like Uber Eats, but with more paddling and a much lower service fee. The city is a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, a delicate and masterful balance between land and water. The island itself isn't entirely natural. The Aztecs had spent generations expanding it, reclaiming land from the swampy lake bed, using the very same techniques they used for their farms. They were constantly fighting a battle against subsidence and flooding, and their entire world was built upon a deep, practical understanding of the water that surrounded and sustained them. Your goal isn't this bustling urban center, however. Your journey is towards the agricultural heartland that feeds this metropolis, the floating gardens, the chinampas. While some small chinampas were nestled within the city itself, the truly vast, productive fields lay in the freshwater southern lakes of Xochimilco and Chalco. To get there, you must leave the stone and plaster of Tenochtitlan behind and venture back out onto the water, not on a grand causeway, but in a simple canoe, navigating the labyrinth of canals that leads out of the city and into the great green garden that surrounds it. You look for a place where the canoes for hire are gathered, a sort of water taxi stand, ready to find a guide who can pull you away from the city's glow and into the quiet, fertile darkness of the Chinampa district. The air here smells different again, less of cooking fires and more of damp earth, blooming flowers, and the rich promise of things growing in the dark. You find what you're looking for at a busy intersection of two canals, a sort of public landing where dozens of boats are moored. This is a hub of activity, the Aztec equivalent of a bus terminal or a taxi stand. The air is filled with the low murmur of commerce as people negotiate fares and cargo fees. Torches fixed to wooden posts cast long, dancing reflections on the inky water, illuminating the scene in fits and starts. You scan the lineup of canoes, the Akali. They come in all shapes and sizes, each carved from a single massive log. Some are sleek and narrow, the sports cars of the canal system, clearly built for speed and zipping messengers from one end of the city to the other. Others are wide and sturdy. The minivans, some still containing remnants of the day's cargo, a few stray ears of maize, a feather or two from a crate of chickens. You're looking for something in between, a vessel that looks stable and a guide who looks like he knows the way to the quieter, more remote agricultural zones. The reliable sedan of canoes. Your eyes land on a man standing calmly beside a mid-sized canoe, his arms crossed. He isn't shouting for customers like some of the others. He's simply watching the flow of people with a patient, knowing gaze. He's lean and wiry, dressed in a simple white loincloth and a sleeveless tunic. his bare feet planted firmly on the stone embankment. His face is weathered by sun and wind, and his long dark hair is tied back. He is an Akalekwe, a boatman, a master of these waterways. While it's clear that the role of a boatman was a specialized profession, historians still debate the social standing of the Akalekwe. Were they considered simple laborers just one step above a porter? Or did their intimate, almost sacred knowledge of the lake's currents, depths, and secret passages afford them a unique and respected status within the rigid Aztec social hierarchy? Looking at the quiet confidence of this man, you suspect it's the latter. He holds the keys to the kingdom, one paddle stroke at a time. You approach him. You don't speak Nahuatl, and he certainly doesn't speak 21st century English. But the language of commerce is universal. You point out of the city, toward the dark expanse where the Chenampas lie, make a gentle paddling motion with your hands, and then gesture to yourself. He watches you, his expression unreadable for a moment, then a slow nod. He holds up a few fingers, and you understand you need to pay. The currency here isn't coin, but cacao beans. You offer a small handful, and after a moment of consideration, he accepts them with another nod. The deal is struck, no words exchanged. His name, you'll never know. To you, he is simply your guide. He gestures for you to get in. You step down carefully, placing your foot in the center of the canoe's hull, trying to remember everything you've ever learned about not tipping one over, which for most of us is absolutely nothing. The boat rocks for a moment, a sudden precarious wobble that makes your heart jump. You quickly sit down on the woven mat at the bottom with all the grace of a startled flamingo. Your guide steps in behind you, his weight barely disturbing the vessel's balance. He is as sure-footed in this canoe as you are on solid ground. He doesn't use a paddle with a blade at one end, like you might expect. He uses a long, sturdy wooden pole, a punt. With a powerful, practiced movement, he pushes the pole against the muddy bottom of the canal, and the canoe glides smoothly away from the landing. The noise of the busy dock begins to recede almost immediately. With just a few effortless thrusts, you are moving through the dark water, leaving the torchlit avenues of Tenochtitlan behind. As you move through the quieter residential canals, you notice your guide letting out a soft, melodic whistle before navigating a blind corner where a smaller waterway joins your own. A moment later, another canoe appears, and its boatman returns a different, shorter whistle. It's a language of its own. These whistles weren't just for fun. They were a complex system of communication, a way to signal intent, warn of approach, or indicate the size of your vessel. It was the Aztec version of a car horn, only infinitely more pleasant to the ear. The city lights grow more sparse. The grand stone buildings give way to smaller, simpler adobe homes, their dark forms silhouetted against the night sky. The air begins to change again. The smell of wood smoke is replaced by the rich, fertile scent of damp earth and decaying plants, the very essence of the floating gardens you have come to see. Your journey into the green labyrinth has begun. The last flickering torch of the city proper recedes behind you, swallowed by the darkness. The canoe glides from a stone-lined urban canal into a wider, earth-banked channel, and the world changes completely. The sounds of the city, the distant drums, the voices, the general hum, fade to nothing. The silence is so complete you feel like you should whisper. It's the kind of quiet that makes you suddenly aware of the sound of your own breathing, a bit unnerving at first, like the world's power just went out. But then, as your ears adjust, you realize it isn't silent at all. The night is alive with a symphony of new sounds. The dominant sound is the gentle, rhythmic work of your guide. You hear the soft thump as his pole sinks into the muddy canal bottom, a pause, and then a long, wet shush as he pushes the canoe forward. Thump, shush, thump, shush. It's a slow, steady heartbeat for this new world, a sound that you feel as much as you hear. It sets a peaceful, hypnotic pace. Layered over this rhythm is the sound of the ecosystem itself. The air is filled with the chirping of crickets and the incessant, powerful croaking of frogs. There must be thousands of them, their deep, resonant calls echoing across the water from the dark, unseen banks. It's their version of a sold-out stadium tour, and you've got a front-row seat on the water. Every now and then there's a sudden, sharp splash as a fish or a frog jumps into the canal. A night heron lets out a harsh squawk from its unseen perch. This isn't the managed, constructed nature of a city park. This is a wild, living, breathing wetland that has been masterfully shaped into a garden. Your eyes, now fully accustomed to the dark, begin to pick out details. The sky above is a vast velvet blanket, strewn with a breathtaking number of stars, their light unpolluted by the city's glow. The moon is a silver sliver, but it's enough to cast a faint, ethereal light on the scene. The water of the canal is like a mirror, reflecting the starfield perfectly so it feels as if you are gliding through space. On either side of you are the long, dark, rectangular silhouettes of the Chinampas themselves. They are islands of rich, dark earth, rising just a few feet above the water level, their edges softened by the drooping leaves of plants. The air smells incredible. The sharp, smoky scent of the city is gone, replaced by a complex perfume of life. There is the deep, loamy smell of wet, fertile soil, the kind of smell that promises growth. Mingled with it is the fresh, green scent of living plants, the unmistakable sweetness of corn tassels, the peppery notes of marigolds, and the delicate fragrance of some night-blooming flower you can't identify. This is the smell of staggering abundance. The Chinampa system was one of the most intensive and productive forms of agriculture ever devised, capable of producing up to 7 harvests a year. This agricultural powerhouse is what fed the entire city of Tenochtitlan, an urban center larger than any in Europe at the time, and it all ran on mud, water, and human ingenuity. And, well, one other key ingredient. Remember those barges collecting waste back in the city? This is their final destination. The collected human waste, or night soil, was brought out here, mixed with dredged mud and aquatic weeds, and left to compost before being spread on the Chinampas. It was the ultimate closed-loop recycling program, turning the city's waste directly into food. The Aztecs were into composting and sustainable agriculture centuries before it became a trendy hashtag. Just maybe try not to think about the specifics too much while you're admiring the view. Ethnobotanists still debate the full range of plants cultivated on the Chinampas. The Spanish chroniclers focused on the big three, maize, beans, and squash, but the gardens were home to so much more. They grew tomatoes, amaranth, chilies of every imaginable heat and flavor, and a vast array of flowers and medicinal herbs. And of course they grew fruits, many of which are now forgotten or little known outside of this region. It is these forgotten fruits that you have come to find. As your canoe continues its silent, steady progress deeper into the labyrinth, you feel a sense of profound peace. You have left the world of stone temples and imperial power and entered the city's gentle green heart. Your guide pulls the canoe into a smaller, narrower channel and then brings it to a gentle stop, resting the side of the boat against the bank of a mature, plant-covered chinampa. He points with his long pole across the water to the opposite bank. It's not a garden at all. It's a construction site, an island in the making, illuminated by a single torch set on a post, its flame casting a flickering golden light on the scene. Here, in this quiet corner of the lake, you can see the process from the very beginning. It's basically the ultimate raised garden bed. Just instead of ordering lumber and bags of topsoil from a home improvement store, your primary building materials are mud, sticks, and pondweed. It's very organic, very DIY. The first step is to define the space. You can see a long rectangle, maybe 30 meters long and 5 meters wide, marked out by a series of thick wooden stakes that have been driven deep into the shallow lake bed. They stand in two parallel lines like ghostly soldiers at attention. There is considerable debate among researchers about the sheer scale and speed of Chinampa construction. Was it a slow, organic expansion, with one family adding a new plot every generation? Or were there massive state-sponsored projects to build entire districts at once, a sort of pre-Columbian suburban boom to feed the capital? The logistics of either are staggering. Between the main stakes, you can see a dense latticework of woven reeds and branches, forming a kind of permeable fence or wattle. This is the container, the giant basket that will hold the new island together. It's a surprisingly sturdy-looking structure even in its unfinished state. Building one of these is incredibly labor-intensive. It's not a job for someone who is worried about getting their tunic dirty. It involves a lot of time spent standing in waist-deep water, wrestling with mud and branches. The next step is the filling. Another canoe is tied up at the site, and a man is methodically scooping up aquatic weeds and algae from the surface of the canal with a net, piling the green, dripping mass inside the enclosure. He is clearing the waterway and providing the first layer of the new garden at the same time, a foundational layer of rich, organic material that will slowly decompose and release its nutrients. Then comes the most important ingredient, the mud. Your guide dips his pole into the water and you hear a thick sucking sound as he pulls it free. The bottom here isn't rock or sand. It's a deep, seemingly endless deposit of soft, rich sediment, the accumulated decay of centuries of lake life. The man at the construction site uses a special shovel-like tool to dredge this black gold from the canal floor. He scoops up a heavy, dripping load and slops it over the wattle fence and onto the bed of decaying weeds. It's a slow, painstaking process. Layer of vegetation, layer of mud, layer of algae, layer of mud. He builds it up, bit by bit, until the surface of the new island is just a foot or two above the water level of the canal. This process is what makes the whole system a self-sustaining miracle. The canals aren't just irrigation channels or transportation routes. They are the source of the Chinampa's fertility. Every time a farmer dredges the canal to add a new layer of mud to their garden, they are refertilizing their plot with the richest, most nutrient-dense material imaginable, and they are keeping the canal from silting up. It's a perfect, elegant loop. You notice something else. At the corners of the rectangular plot, and at intervals along its sides, the builders have planted long, slender saplings. These are ahuejote trees, a type of local willow. These are not just for decoration. The ahuejote is the Chinampa's living anchor. As the tree grows, its dense, thirsty roots will spread throughout the artificial island, binding the layers of mud and vegetation together, creating a strong, living wall that prevents erosion. The roots will grow right down through the Chinampa and into the lake bed itself, permanently fixing the floating garden in place. It was a form of living rebar, a brilliant use of natural engineering. After all that work, you have a brand new custom-built island. It probably wouldn't pass a modern building inspection, but the crop yield is fantastic, and the water views are to die for. You watch the lone builder work for a while longer under the torchlight, his movements practiced and efficient, a silent testament to generations of accumulated knowledge. He is not just a farmer, he is an island builder, an earth shaper, a partner in a dance with water and mud. Your guide gives a final push with his pole, and the canoe glides away from the construction site, leaving the lone worker to his nocturnal island building. You move back into the main channel, the water dark and silent around you. The guide now steers the canoe so it drifts right alongside the bank of a fully mature Chinampa, a vibrant jungle of green illuminated by the soft moonlight. The leaves of squash plants spill over the edge, their tendrils nearly touching the water's surface. Cornstalks stand tall and straight, their feathery tassels like dark plumes against the starry sky. He lets the canoe come to a stop, its wooden side brushing against the muddy bank with a soft, damp sound. He then does something unexpected. He plunges his long pole deep into the canal, right next to the boat, and with a grunt of effort, levers it upwards. On the flat end of the pole is a large, dripping clump of the canal bottom. He brings it close for you to inspect. This is it, the secret ingredient, the black gold that fuels an empire, the sacred mud. The smell is the first thing that hits you. It's potent. It's the kind of smell that might have you wrinkling your nose anywhere else. But here, in this context, it is the perfume of pure vitality. It's the rich, anaerobic scent of a healthy pond bottom, the earthy aroma of a forest floor after a heavy rain, and the faint salty tang of the lake all mixed together. It smells alive. Because it is. You lean closer to look. This isn't just uniform brown dirt. It's a deep, glistening, almost jet-black ooze. In the faint light, you can see it is a complex mixture. There are the fine particles of silt and clay that form its body, but woven throughout are countless fragments of decaying organic matter. The fibrous remains of reeds, tiny, iridescent snail shells, the dark shapes of last season's leaves, and the green tint of algae. This isn't your average potting soil from a plastic bag. This is the artisanal, handcrafted, bespoke soil of the gods. It's got everything a plant could ever want, including, if you look closely, some very happy-looking worms wriggling within the mass. Soil scientists and archaeologists continue to debate the precise chemical composition that made Chinampa soil so uniquely productive over centuries without depletion. What was the exact recipe? Was there a perfect ratio of dredged mud to aquatic weeds to composted waste that the Chinamperos had perfected through generations of trial and error? Or was the magic simply in the constant act of renewal, the dredging that ensured the gardens never grew tired? The truth is likely a mix of both. The Chinamperos were master agriculturalists, and their knowledge was profound, even if they couldn't explain the microbiology of it. They knew that the mud from certain parts of the lake was better than others. They knew that letting the night soil, remember that, sit and compost for a certain amount of time made it more powerful. Some have even suggested that they would inoculate a brand new Chinampa with a few canoe loads of mud from a particularly old and fertile one, intentionally transferring the complex web of bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms that made the soil so vibrant, much like a baker uses a bit of old starter to bring a new loaf of sourdough to life. This mud was far more valuable than gold to the Aztec people. You can't eat gold. But from a patch of this miraculous earth you could grow enough maize to feed a family, with a surplus to take to the Tlatelolco market to trade for everything else you might need. Cotton for clothes, salt from the northern lakes, brightly colored feathers from the tropics, or a sharp obsidian blade mined from the volcanic mountains. This mud was the foundation of their entire economy. It was their wealth, their security, their legacy. Your guide scrapes the clump of mud off his pole and back into the canal with a soft splash. He gives a gentle push, and the canoe begins to move again, gliding past the rows of thriving plants. Every single leaf, every stalk of corn, every swelling squash, and every forgotten fruit you are about to discover owes its existence to that dark, fragrant, living mud. It is the true heart of the Chinampas, the quiet, unsung miracle that made this whole green world possible. Your guide lets the canoe drift in the gentle current of the canal, his pole resting across the hull. He raises a hand and points, not to the tall rows of maize or the sprawling squash vines, but to a small, gnarled tree growing right at the edge of the Chinampa. It's more of a large, thorny shrub than a true tree, its branches reaching out over the water. Hanging in thick clusters from its boughs are small round fruits, glowing a soft yellow-orange in the moonlight. They look a bit like crab apples that decided to go on a tropical vacation and came back with a very nice tan. This is the first of the forgotten fruits you've come to find. This is the Tenochtitlan. The name itself is a direct link to this place and its people. It comes from the Nahuatl word Texocotl, which is a compound of tetl, meaning stone, and zocotl, meaning sour fruit, the stone fruit. A perfect, literal description for a fruit that contains several small, very hard seeds at its core. As the canoe drifts closer, you can catch a faint, sweet perfume on the night air. It's a complex, tantalizing scent. A little like apple, a little like guava, with a floral note you can't quite place. The guide reaches out, plucks one of the small fruits from an overhanging branch, and silently hands it to you. It feels smooth and firm in your palm, heavier than it looks. This is Crataegus mexicana, a species of hawthorn native to the highlands of Mexico. While it might be forgotten in many parts of the world, it was a vital part of the Aztec pantry. It's an incredibly hardy plant, tolerant of the damp conditions of the chinampas and able to thrive in the rich, black mud. You imagine biting into it. The flavor would be intense. A raw Tenochtitlan isn't just a burst of sweetness. It's a complex experience of tart, tangy, and acidic notes with an underlying fragrance that fills your senses. The texture is dense, almost paste-like, and slightly mealy. Biting into a raw one can be an interesting experience. It's the kind of fruit that makes you pucker up and think, this would probably be much better with a lot of sugar and maybe some cinnamon. And the Aztecs, being culinary geniuses, knew this. While it could be eaten raw, the Tenochtitlan's true magic was released with heat and time. Its greatest superpower is that it is incredibly high in pectin, the natural substance that makes jams and jellies set. The Aztecs would cook tejocotes down into thick, sweet pastes and fruit cheeses, a way to preserve the harvest and create a portable, high-energy snack. They were also stewed, sweetened with maguey syrup, and served as a simple dessert. While the tejocote is widely documented as a food source, anthropologists still debate the extent of its ceremonial or ritualistic use by the Aztecs. Its vibrant sunlight color and the fact that it ripens late in the year, around the time of the winter solstice, may have given it a special significance in rituals tied to the changing of the seasons. Were these golden orbs simply food, or were they also symbols of the sun's endurance offered up in ceremonies to encourage its return after the shortest day of the year? The surviving records are tantalizingly quiet on the subject. The plant wasn't just used for its fruit. Like other hawthorn species around the world, which have a long history in folk medicine, the Aztecs likely used the root and leaves of the tejocote for various remedies. It may have been used to make infusions for digestive issues or as a diuretic. Every part of the plant had a purpose. You look at the small glowing fruit in your hand, this direct living link to the past. In modern Mexico, the tejocote is still beloved. It is the absolute, non-negotiable star ingredient in ponche navideño, the warm, spiced fruit punch that is synonymous with Christmas time. So in a way, every time someone enjoys a cup of ponche today, they're tasting a flavor that has been floating through these canals for well over 500 years. A flavor born from sacred mud and starlight. Your guide gives a slight nod, as if to say, "You see?" He takes his pole, and with a soft push the canoe begins to move again, leaving the little stone fruit tree and its fragrant golden harvest behind as you glide deeper into the garden. The canoe continues its silent journey, the dark water parting before its bow. You glide past long rectangular gardens, each a testament to meticulous care, each breathing a quiet, living energy into the cool night air. The rhythm of your guide's poling is so steady, so ingrained, that it has become part of the background silence as natural as the croaking of the frogs. He steers the boat around a gentle bend in the canal, and a new sight comes into view, one that brings a human scale to this vast agricultural landscape. Ahead, nestled at the junction where four chinampas meet, is a small island of solid ground, slightly more elevated than the garden plots. On it sits a single small hut, the home of a chinampero and his family. A warm, soft light spills from the low, open doorway, painting a golden rectangle on the dark earth outside and shimmering on the surface of the canal. The hut is a simple, humble affair. Its walls are made of wattle and daub, a lattice of woven sticks and reeds packed with mud, and the roof is a thick, sloping thatch of dried marsh grasses. It's a structure made entirely from the materials of the lake itself. The location is perfect. It's got a water view from every single angle, and the commute to work is literally 3 steps out the front door. You can't beat that, even with a modern work-from-home setup. As you drift closer, you can make out more details in the soft firelight. Leaning against the outside wall are the tools of the trade. A canoe, which is a sort of paddle-shaped digging stick with a fire-hardened blade used for planting and weeding, a fine meshed fishing net draped over a post to dry, and a large woven basket for carrying produce. This is the entire world of a Chinampa farmer, distilled into one small, peaceful scene. Curled up by the doorway, soaking in the warmth from the fire within, is a strange-looking dog. It's lean, with long legs and alert ears, but what's most striking is that it's almost completely hairless, its dark, wrinkled skin gleaming in the light. A few tufts of coarse hair on its head give it a slightly comical punk rock look. This is a Huitzilopochtli, the ancient Mexican hairless dog. These animals were deeply woven into the fabric of life here. They were loyal companions, sharp-eyed watchdogs, and, thanks to their high body temperature and lack of insulating fur, they were also living, breathing hot water bottles, perfect for warming your feet on a cold night. Very energy efficient. Archaeologists and historians debate whether Chinampero families lived in total isolation on their individual plots, or were organized into larger, village-like clusters on more stable ground. The evidence from the surviving Chinampa zones, like Xochimilco, suggests it was probably a mixture of both. Some families, perhaps wanting more solitude or guarding a particularly productive set of plots, lived in isolated huts like this one. Others clustered together in small hamlets, sharing resources and a sense of community. From inside the hut, you can hear the faint, low murmur of voices and the soft crackle of a small cooking fire. It's the sound of a family winding down at the end of a long day. The Chinamperos were commoners in the complex Aztec social hierarchy, but they were also highly respected specialists. Their knowledge was not learned from books, but passed down from parent to child, generation after generation. They knew the subtle signs that predicted a change in the weather. They knew precisely which phase of the moon was best for planting certain seeds. They knew the name and use of every plant, both wild and cultivated, that grew in their domain. This was a life lived by the rhythms of the sun, the moon, and the seasons. There were no quarterly reports or mandatory team-building exercises. Just the quiet, constant, and deeply satisfying work of coaxing life from the sacred mud. Your guide holds the canoe still in the water for a long moment, allowing you to take in the scene. He is one of them. This is his world. He shows it to you with a quiet, unassuming pride. Then, with a barely perceptible movement, he dips his pole back into the water and pushes off, letting the canoe glide away, leaving the little hut and its warm bubble of light to its peaceful slumber. You move back into the darkness, the image of that simple, self-contained life lingering in your mind. Your canoe drifts into a pool where the canal widens slightly. Here the water is exceptionally still, and the moonlight seems to pool on the surface, creating a window into the world below. Your guide stops poling, letting the boat glide to a silent halt. He leans forward, his dark eyes fixed on the water, and points a single steady finger downward. You follow his gaze, leaning carefully over the side of the canoe, your breath held in anticipation. Down on the muddy bottom, moving with a slow, deliberate grace, is one of the strangest and most magical creatures you will ever see. It looks like a Pokemon that someone left in the water too long and it decided to evolve. It's about the length of your hand, with smooth, pale, pinkish-white skin that seems almost translucent. It has 4 little legs that it uses to walk along the canal bed, and a long, finned tail that propels it through the water with a gentle, undulating motion. Its eyes are small, dark, and lidless, and its wide mouth is permanently fixed in what looks like a gentle, enigmatic smile. But the most astonishing feature is the crown of feathery gills that fans out from either side of its head. They are a deep, fleshy red, like branches of coral, and they wave with a soft, hypnotic motion in the water. This is the Ambystoma mexicanum, the axolotl. This creature is a biological marvel. It's a species of salamander, but it has a rare trait called neoteny, which means it reaches full adulthood without ever undergoing metamorphosis. While its cousins are busy losing their gills, growing lungs, and crawling out onto land, the axolotl decides to stay a kid forever, living its entire life in the water, breathing through those beautiful, feathery gills. Modern scientists are obsessed with this little creature, and for good reason. It has regenerative abilities that border on superpowers. If an axolotl loses a leg, it doesn't just form a stump, it grows a perfect new leg. It can regenerate its tail, its jaws, its internal organs, and even damaged portions of its spinal cord and brain. If it could just figure out how to regrow a full bank account, it would be the perfect animal. But to the Aztecs, the axolotl was far more than a scientific curiosity. It was a god in hiding. Its name is pure Nahuatl, a combination of ATL, the word for water, and Xolotl, the name of a powerful and cunning god. According to their mythology, when the gods decided they needed to sacrifice themselves to get the new sun moving across the sky, Xolotl, the god of lightning, twins, and misfortune, got cold feet. To escape his fate, he transformed himself into various things, and his final disguise was to leap into the lake and become this strange, water-breathing salamander. So, according to legend, this little smiling creature is a god hiding from his responsibilities. It's the most extreme case of, I have a meeting I want to get out of, in all of history. This mythological connection gave the axolotl a sacred, complex status. It was a creature of the divine, a physical link to the story of creation. You can feel that reverence in the way your guide watches it, a quiet respect for the spirit that lives in his canals. While the axolotl was clearly of mythological importance, biologists and historians still debate its role in the Aztec diet. Was it a sacred creature and therefore taboo to eat? Or was it considered a delicacy, perhaps reserved for priests or nobility on special ceremonial occasions? The accounts of the Spanish conquistadors mention seeing axolotls for sale in the great market, which suggests they were indeed eaten, perhaps in a stew or roasted. The full cultural context, however, is a mystery, a soft-bodied question mark at the bottom of the lake. You watch the little creature for a while longer as it sniffs around the mud for a worm or a tiny insect. It seems completely unaware of you, existing in its own slow, silent, watery world. It is the perfect embodiment of this place, ancient, unique, and possessed of a quiet, unassuming magic. It is a living relic, a dream of a god, still walking the muddy floors of its ancestors' canals. With a final gentle push of its tail, it swims into the shadow of a water lily and vanishes, leaving you staring at the empty water, not entirely sure if what you just saw was real. The canoe glides on, leaving the memory of the god salamander shimmering in its wake. The feeling of quiet wonder lingers as you continue your journey through the liquid twilight of the Chinampas. After a few more minutes of rhythmic poling, your guide once again steers the canoe towards the bank of a garden. He points to a tree that stands taller than the gnarled tejacote shrub you saw earlier. This one is more recognizable, its dark bark and spreading branches looking surprisingly familiar. It looks a lot like a cherry tree, and the fruit hanging in small, drooping clusters from its branches looks like, well, cherries. It seems that even 500 years ago everyone could agree that a good cherry is a fantastic idea. This is the capulin. The name is a Spanish adaptation of its original Nahuatl name, capulin, and it is indeed a true member of the cherry family, Prunus salicifolia. It's a native species, perfectly adapted to this high-altitude, water-rich environment. Unlike the imported sweet cherries you might be used to, the capulin is a wilder, more intense cousin. The fruits are small, about the size of a blueberry, and when fully ripe, they are a deep, dark, purplish black, glistening like polished obsidian beads in the faint moonlight. Your guide plucks a small cluster and hands them to you. The scent is faint but distinct, a sweet, slightly almond-like fragrance that is characteristic of the cherry family. You pop one into your mouth. The flavor is a delightful explosion. It starts with a wave of sweetness, rich and wine-like, which is immediately followed by a sharp, tangy, and slightly astringent kick. It's that perfect sweet-tart balance that makes you want to immediately eat a whole handful, followed by the mild, timeless dilemma of not knowing where to gracefully spit out all the pits. The capulin was a beloved and versatile fruit for the Aztec people. It was, of course, eaten fresh in great quantities when it was in season. Children would climb the trees and stuff themselves with the sweet, dark fruit. But it was also preserved. The cherries were laid out on woven mats to dry in the sun, concentrating their sugars and turning them into something like a raisin or a dried currant, providing a welcome burst of sweetness in the months when fresh fruit was scarce. But the Aztecs didn't stop there. Ethnohistorians continue to debate the economic significance of the capulin. Was it just a common foraged fruit available to everyone? A simple treat gathered from the wilder edges of the Chinampas? Or were specific superior cultivars with larger, sweeter fruit intentionally grown on these prime agricultural islands, making them a more valuable and controlled commodity destined for the great markets? The presence of these healthy, productive trees within the Chinampa system suggests they were a carefully tended crop. They were also masters of fermentation. The capulin cherries were mashed and mixed with water and left to ferment into a cloudy, potent alcoholic beverage. This capulin wine would have been a festive drink, consumed during the many religious ceremonies and celebrations that marked the Aztec calendar, and, true to their philosophy of using every part of what the earth provided, the Aztecs didn't even waste the pits. After a session of feasting on fresh capulines, the small, hard stones were collected. They were cleaned, polished until they shone, sometimes dyed with bright pigments and then meticulously drilled. These polished pits were then strung together on fiber cords to create beautiful, rattling necklaces, bracelets, and ceremonial belts worn by dancers. It was the ultimate sustainable fashion statement. Why buy imported beads when your last snack provides you with all the accessories you need for the next festival? You roll a single capulin pit in your palm, feeling its smooth, hard surface. It's a tiny, tangible link to a whole world of ingenuity and resourcefulness. This wasn't just food. It was a beverage, a preserved good, and a piece of jewelry, all from a single tree, grown in the magical mud of a man-made island. Your guide waits patiently, then with a soft push of his pole you are moving again, the taste of the wild cherry still lingering on your tongue as you glide deeper into the night. Leaving the dark sweetness of the capulin cherry behind, your journey continues. The canoe rounds another bend, and you are met with an experience that overwhelms your senses, not of taste this time, but of sight and smell. Ahead of you, on both sides of the canal, the Chinampas are no longer a patchwork of green corn stalks and dark-leaved fruit trees. Instead, they are painted with a single blazing color. It's a huge, breathtaking field of what looks like 1,000 tiny suns blooming in the middle of the night. Even in the soft, monochromatic light of the moon, The color is undeniably intensely orange and yellow. It's a mass of large, frilly, pom-pom-shaped flowers, packed so densely together that you can barely see the green of their leaves. This is the flower of the dead, the cempasúchil. Its name comes from the Nahuatl Sempohualcoxochitl, which translates to 20 flower, or flower of 20 petals, a name that hints at its full, multi-petaled bloom. We know it today as the Aztec marigold, or simply the marigold. As you glide between these fields of vibrant color, the air becomes thick with its powerful, unique fragrance. It's a smell that gets right into the back of your sinuses and sets up camp. It's not the delicate, sweet perfume of a rose or a jasmine. It is a loud, pungent, and deeply aromatic announcement of a smell, a mix of sharp, herbaceous notes with a musky, almost resinous undertone. The flower equivalent of a trumpet fanfare. These flowers were not grown for food, nor were they simply for decoration. They had a profound and sacred purpose. To the Aztecs, the cempasúchil was the guide for the souls of the dead. They believed that the intense color and pungent scent of the flower acted as a beacon, a fragrant, golden path that the spirits of their departed ancestors could follow to return to the world of the living for a brief visit during specific festivals. The Chinampas weren't just feeding the living city of Tenochtitlan, they were also tending the gardens that would welcome the city of the dead. It's the most cheerful-looking plant you've ever seen associated with the underworld. This tradition is so powerful that it has survived for over 500 years, right through the Spanish conquest and into the modern day. The cempasúchil is still the iconic, indispensable flower of the Mexican celebration of Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. Its petals are still scattered to create paths leading to household altars, or ofrendas, guiding the spirits home. As you float through this ancient field, you are witnessing the birth of a tradition that continues to be one of the most beautiful and poignant expressions of cultural identity in the world. Historians and botanists debate whether the cempasúchil's significance was primarily spiritual, or if its widespread cultivation was also driven by its practical uses. While its connection to death rituals is undisputed, the sheer amount of valuable Chinampa real estate dedicated to it suggests it must have had other important uses. And it did. The brilliant petals, when crushed, produced a potent and color-fast yellow-orange dye used to bring vibrant color to cotton textiles. The flower also had a place in Aztec medicine, used in remedies to treat everything from hiccups to being struck by lightning. And there was one other, rather quirky use. They would harvest the petals, dry them, and mix them into feed for their domesticated turkeys. Why? To make the bird's skin and the yolks of their eggs a more appealing, richer yellow. It was an ancient, all-natural food coloring. Even the Aztec dinner table, it seems, had to be camera-ready for the gram. You reach out as the canoe glides close to the bank and let your fingers brush against the soft, ruffled heads of the flowers. They feel like velvet. The powerful scent clings to your skin. To cultivate so much land just for flowers speaks to a worldview where the spiritual world was not separate from the physical one. Feeding the gods and honoring the dead were just as important as feeding the living. The Chinampas nourished the body, but with flowers like the cempasúchil, they also nourished the soul. Your guide pulls you onward, and the fields of gold slowly recede, though their unforgettable fragrance lingers in the air long after they are out of sight. The heavy perfume of the cempasúchil fields begins to fade, replaced by the cleaner, greener scent of the gardens. Your canoe continues its journey, a silent shadow moving through a network of liquid roads. Your guide alters course slightly, poling the boat so it glides directly under the long, drooping branches of a tall, slender tree. The leaves, long and narrow, rustle in the gentle night breeze, creating a soft, whispering sound. They shimmer a pale silver green where the moonlight catches them. This is the ahuejote, the Aztec willow. You've seen its saplings being planted at the corners of new chinampas, but this is a mature specimen, a silent, graceful guardian that has likely stood watch over this particular canal for decades. It's the kind of elegant, slightly melancholy tree you'd expect to see in a painting or want to have a picnic under. You know, if the ground wasn't essentially a very well-organized mud pie. Remember the living rebar I mentioned earlier? This is it. This tree is the unsung hero of the entire Chinampa system. The quiet leafy bodyguard that prevents the whole enterprise from dissolving back into the lake. It doesn't get the same glory as the life-sustaining maize or the flashy spiritual marigolds. But without the Ahuejote, every farmer's precious hand-built island would slowly but surely erode and wash away. The genius of the Chinampa system wasn't just in piling up mud. It was in understanding how to make that mud permanent. When a Chinampa was built, these willow saplings were planted along its perimeter. The Ahuejote loves water, and its roots are incredibly aggressive and fast-growing. They would spread out from the base of the tree, forming a dense, fibrous net that permeated every inch of the Chinampa's structure. This living network of roots bound the layers of mud, silt, and decaying plants together, creating a structure far stronger than its components. The roots would then continue downwards, deep into the lake bed, anchoring the entire artificial island firmly in place. It was a brilliant self-maintaining and self-repairing solution to the problem of erosion. But the Ahuejote's job didn't end there. Ecologists and hydrologists still debate the full impact of these trees on the Chinampa microenvironment. Their leafy canopies provided shade from the intense high-altitude sun, which would have helped the soil retain moisture and protected more delicate plants. They acted as natural windbreaks, sheltering the crops from strong gusts that could sweep across the wide, flat lake. And by shading the canals themselves, they would have reduced the rate of water evaporation, helping to maintain the stable water levels that were so crucial to the health of the gardens. The tree was also a source of materials. Its flexible branches were used in wattle and daub construction. Remember the walls of the Chinampero's hut? And for weaving baskets. The wood, when trimmed, provided a ready source of fuel for the cooking fires. It was a living fence, a structural support, a climate control system, and a hardware store all in one. And remarkably, it was a medicine cabinet. Like other species of willow found across the world, the bark of the Ahuejote tree is rich in a compound called salicin. If that word sounds familiar, it should. It's the natural substance from which salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin, was first synthesized. The Aztecs, through generations of observation, knew this. If someone was suffering from a fever, a headache, or the aches and pains of a long day's work in the mud, they could prepare an infusion from the Ahuejote bark. It was a natural painkiller and anti-inflammatory growing right at their doorstep. So if you got a headache from trying to understand all the complex theology, you could just go chew on a bit of your fence. Very convenient. You look up through the delicate, rustling leaves at the stars beyond. This tree is a perfect symbol of the Aztec worldview, pragmatic, deeply observant of the natural world, and ingeniously holistic. Nothing had just one purpose. Everything, the mud, the water, the plants, the animals, and the people, was part of a complex, interconnected, and beautifully functional system. Your guide's pole finds the canal bottom, and with a soft push you glide out from under the willow's gentle watch, continuing your journey into the fertile heart of the night. The whispering of the willow leaves fades behind you as your canoe slips back into an open channel. The night has grown deeper, the stars more brilliant. The air is cool on your skin. After a few moments of silent gliding, your guide once again slows the canoe, bringing it alongside another Chinampa. He points towards a medium-sized tree with dark, waxy-looking evergreen leaves that gleam in the soft light. Dotted amongst the leaves are round, green fruits, each about the size of a fist. Honestly, at first glance, it's not the most exciting thing you've ever seen. The fruit looks like a green, slightly flattened tomato that has given up on its dream of ever turning red. It has a papery green calyx on top where the stem meets the fruit, just like a persimmon or a tomato. There's no bright color, no enticing fragrance. It seems plain, utilitarian, almost vegetable-like. Your guide, seeing your lack of excitement, allows a small smile to touch his lips. He reaches out, his fingers testing a few of the green orbs before he finds one that is slightly soft to the touch. He plucks it from the branch with a gentle twist. It feels heavy in his hand. He then produces a small, impossibly sharp blade of black obsidian from a pouch at his waist, and, with a quick, practiced movement, slices the fruit in half. He holds the two halves out for you to see and you gasp. It is the ultimate bait and switch of the fruit world. The outside promised a boring, unripe vegetable, but the inside reveals that dessert is served. The pulp within is not green or white or yellow. It is a deep, rich, shocking black, the color of tar, of squid ink, of the night sky itself. And the texture isn't firm or grainy, it's a smooth, soft, lustrous custard. It looks exactly like a bowl of rich, dark chocolate pudding. This is the tzipatl, the fruit that gave its name to a whole family of soft, sweet fruits, the sapotes. We call this one the black sapote. He gestures for you to smell it. You lean in. The scent is mild, not overpowering, but it's unmistakable. It's a sweet, earthy smell, and yes, it smells vaguely of chocolate. You imagine taking a spoonful. The taste would be uncanny. It's not intensely sugary like modern puddings, but it has a natural, mild sweetness and a texture that is impossibly smooth and custardy, with no fibers or graininess at all. It is, for all intents and purposes, a healthy, all-natural chocolate pudding that grows on a tree. The Aztecs were enjoying this treat for centuries before the rest of the world had even invented pudding. They were once again way ahead of the culinary curve. The black sapote was eaten fresh, its soft pulp scooped out and enjoyed as a simple, delicious dessert. But it was also mashed and mixed with other ingredients. Ethnobotanists debate whether the Aztecs cultivated specific varieties of black sapote for different qualities, some sweeter, some with a darker color, some with a better texture. Such horticultural sophistication is likely, given their deep knowledge of plants. They may have mixed the pulp with honey or maguey syrup to sweeten it, or perhaps with a pinch of chili powder for a complex, spicy sweet treat. The dramatic transformation of the fruit, from a hard, unripe green orb to a soft, utterly black delicacy, would not have been lost on the Aztecs. It's easy to imagine that this fruit held a symbolic power, perhaps associated with the earth, the underworld, or the night sky. Its plain exterior hiding a secret magical core is a powerful metaphor. This tree is a type of persimmon, and like its orange cousins, the fruit is inedibly astringent when unripe. The Chinamperos knew exactly when to harvest, picking the fruit when it was still hard and green, and then letting it sit and soften for several days until it was perfectly ripe. This allowed them to transport the fruit to the great markets of the city, without it turning to mush along the way. It was another example of the deep, practical knowledge these farmers possessed. You stare at the two black halves of the fruit in the guide's hands, a perfect edible representation of the night that surrounds you. It's a quiet reminder that the most wonderful things are often hidden behind a plain exterior, and that this ancient garden is still full of surprises. Your guide disposes of the empty black sapote rind in the water, where it will sink and become part of the rich sediment, continuing the cycle of life. He gives a push with his pole, and the canoe moves on. You've seen the construction of a chinampa. You've felt the magic of its soil, and you've tasted the strange fruits that grow from it. But a question might be forming in your mind. How did they manage it all? How did they ensure a constant, year-round cycle of planting and harvesting to feed a massive city? The answer lies in another example of their quiet, agricultural genius. Your guide poles the canoe into a sheltered inlet, a small dead-end canal protected on three sides by mature chinampas lined with willow trees. Here, on a low, flat section of a garden, a single torch illuminates a farmer engaged in a delicate and crucial task. This is a nursery. Before you is a shallow, rectangular bed of the finest, smoothest, blackest mud, dredged from the canal and spread out like a thick, wet cake. The farmer is kneeling beside it. He holds a small grid-like wooden frame, which he presses gently into the surface of the mud, leaving the impression of perfect 2-inch squares. He then sets the frame aside and, taking a small pouch, begins to place a single, precious seed in the exact center of each square. He works with a quiet, focused precision, his movements economical and graceful. Each seed is placed with the care of a jeweler setting a stone. It's the kind of calm, meditative work that would probably be a viral hit on a satisfying videos channel today. This is the chapin, the Aztec seedbed, the key to their incredible productivity. By starting their seeds in these protected, nutrient-rich beds, the chinamperos could guarantee a high germination rate and give their seedlings a strong, healthy start in life, safe from pests and weather. On cold, high-altitude nights when a sudden frost could kill a tender sprout, the farmer would simply cover these beds with woven reed mats, creating a miniature, temporary greenhouse. But the real brilliance comes in the next step. You watch as the farmer moves to another seedbed, one where the seeds have already sprouted into tiny, vibrant green shoots. He takes a sharp, spatula-like tool and carefully cuts along the grid lines he made earlier. He then slides the tool underneath one of the squares and lifts it out. What he holds is a perfect cube of black mud with a healthy little seedling growing right in the middle, its roots already well established within the cube. This is the Aztec equivalent of the little peat pellets or starter pots you might buy at a garden center, but infinitely more sustainable and without any plastic packaging. They were making their own biodegradable, nutrient-packed seedling pots on demand. This method was so efficient it was almost foolproof. It completely eliminated the shock and stress that plants often suffer during transplanting. There was no need to pull a delicate seedling from the earth, tearing its fine roots. Instead, the farmer would simply carry these mud cubes, these chapines, to the main garden plot, use his digging stick to make a hole, and place the entire cube inside. The seedling would barely even notice it had been moved. Its roots would simply continue to grow out of the mud cube and into the surrounding soil of the chinampa. Plug-and-play planting. This system allowed the chinamperos to achieve an almost continuous harvest. While one crop was maturing in the main garden, the next was already sprouting in the nursery. The moment a row of maize was harvested, a new set of chapines with young bean sprouts could be planted in its place. This is how they managed to get up to 7 harvests a year from a single plot. It was a perfectly timed, highly organized dance of cultivation. Agricultural historians still debate just how systematized and widespread the use of chapines was across the entire Aztec Empire. Was this highly sophisticated technique limited to the unique, hyper-fertile conditions of the Chinampa zone? Or were similar intensive nursery methods being used in the terraced farms on the mountain slopes and the rain-fed fields of the mainland? The sheer productivity of the Chinampas suggests this was a specialized, perfected art form. You watch the farmer work, a silent, humble figure performing a task of immense importance. He is not just planting seeds, he is guaranteeing the future. He is the first link in the chain that leads from this sacred mud to the tortillas and tamales that will be eaten in the bustling market of Tenochtitlan. It is a slow, quiet, and profoundly hopeful process. Your canoe glides away from the quiet nursery, leaving the farmer to his delicate and hopeful work. You move back into a main channel, the dark forms of the Chinampas a continuous, fertile presence on either side. You've seen how these islands are built, planted, and renewed, but a new thought drifts into your mind. When you create a giant, year-round, all-you-can-eat buffet of delicious, thriving plants, You're not just going to attract human customers. Every hungry insect, every nibbling snail, and every greedy caterpillar in the Valley of Mexico is going to have your address circled on their map. So how did the Chinamperos protect their priceless crops? Without chemical pesticides or modern interventions, how did they stop their floating paradise from being eaten into oblivion? The answer, like everything else here, was a masterpiece of observation, balance, and working with nature, not against it. They practiced a sophisticated form of what we now call integrated pest management. Part of the solution was simple: painstaking diligence. A lot of it came down to good old-fashioned manual labor. You can imagine farmers and their children spending hours every day moving slowly through their crops, carefully checking the underside of leaves for eggs and picking off any unwanted six-legged squatters by hand. It's the most eco-friendly pest control there is, but it probably wasn't the most glamorous job on the Chinampa. But their methods went far beyond simple bug picking. They were masters of biological control, essentially recruiting a private army of predators to defend their gardens. They understood that not all insects were enemies. They encouraged spiders to spin their webs among the cornstalks to catch flying pests. They knew that certain types of predatory wasps and beetles would prey on the caterpillars that tried to devour their squash leaves. They created an environment where the good guys could thrive and keep the bad guys in check. Their use of companion planting was also incredibly advanced. Remember the fields of pungent cempasúchil, the Aztec marigold? They weren't just for the dead. Farmers knew that planting marigolds and other strongly scented herbs, like epazote, alongside their crops helped to repel certain pests. The chemicals released by the marigold's roots are known to kill nematodes, microscopic worms that can devastate the roots of plants like tomatoes and beans. The Aztecs didn't have microscopes to see the nematodes, but they saw the results. The beans grew better when the marigolds were their neighbors. Perhaps the most ingenious and charming of their pest control agents were the ducks. As you glide along, you might see a small flock of domesticated ducks being gently herded down a canal by a farmer in a canoe. They aren't just out for a leisurely swim. They're on the clock. These ducks were a highly trained pest control squad, and their payment was a delicious feast of slugs, snails, and aquatic insect larvae that might otherwise harm the roots of the Chinampa crops. It was a perfect system. The ducks kept the canals clean and the pests in check. In return, they were housed and fed, and when their pest control careers were over, their pension plan was to become the main ingredient in a rich, festive stew. While it's known that the Aztecs practiced these sophisticated biological controls, historians and entomologists debate the efficacy of some of their more esoteric methods. Early Spanish chroniclers, with a mix of awe and bewilderment, recorded Aztec farmers using specific incantations, prayers, and rituals to ward off plagues of locusts or fungal blights. Were these purely superstitious acts, pleas to the gods in the face of overwhelming disaster? Or were these rituals, passed down through generations, timed to coincide with specific ecological or climatic events that we don't yet fully understand? The line between religion and science was, for the Aztecs, beautifully and inextricably blurred. What's clear is that they saw their gardens not as a sterile factory floor, but as a complex, living community. A Chinampa was a delicate balance of water, mud, crops, insects, birds, fish, and humans. Their role was not to eliminate every perceived threat, but to act as a careful steward, a gentle manager ensuring that the balance was always tipped in favor of abundance. You continue to glide through the quiet canals, the lessons of Aztec agriculture unfolding with each gentle push of the pole. Having just contemplated their methods for protecting their crops, your guide now directs your attention to a plant that takes care of its own security. Growing on the drier, more elevated edge of a Chinampa is a plant that looks utterly alien in this soft, watery landscape. It's a dense clump of large, flat green pads stacked on top of one another. and every single inch of it is covered in sharp, menacing spines. This is the nopali, the prickly pear cactus, and its message to the world is loud and clear. Look, but do not touch. It is the grumpy old man of the plant world, a formidable self-defending fortress of a plant. And yet to the Aztecs it was one of the most useful and versatile plants in their entire world. It was a source of food, water, and immense wealth. The flat green pads, the nopales, were a staple vegetable and still are in Mexico today. Once the spines were carefully scraped off, the pads could be grilled, boiled, or stewed, providing a food that was both nutritious and hydrating. But you're here for the fruit. Growing along the edges of the pads are small oblong fruits. These are the nachtli, the prickly pear fruit. Most of these were the sweet variety, known as tuna in Spanish, which ripen to a deep, beautiful red or yellow and have a sweet, melon-like flavor. But your guide is pointing to a specific type. This fruit is a paler green with a pinkish blush, and it stays firm even when ripe. This isn't the sweet dessert fruit. This is its sour cousin, the xoconosl. The name comes directly from Nahuatl, xococ, meaning sour, and nachtli, the word for the fruit. Biting into a raw one would be a real wake-up call for your taste buds. It is intensely tart with a bright acidic flavor that could make a lemon nervous. This sourness wasn't a defect, it was its purpose. The xoconosl wasn't eaten like a fruit. It was used as a culinary tool, a souring agent that added a complex, tangy dimension to savory dishes. The Aztecs would peel it, chop it up, and add it to rich, slow-cooked stews of turkey or wild game. Its bright acidity would cut through the richness of the meat and fat, balancing the flavors in the same way a squeeze of lime or a splash of vinegar might be used today. It was a key ingredient in some of the earliest versions of what would eventually evolve into the complex sauces of Mexico known as mole. Archaeologists still debate the origins and cultivation history of the xoconosl. Was it a naturally occurring sour variant of the prickly pear that the Aztecs simply found and foraged? Or, given their incredible horticultural skills, did they intentionally cultivate and breed specific varieties of nopal cactus to produce a fruit with the perfect level of sourness and the best flavor for their cooking? The evidence points toward a deliberate and sophisticated cultivation, but the wonders of the nopal cactus don't end there. If you were to look very closely at the surface of the cactus pads, you might see small, white, cottony tufts clinging to the surface. These are not a disease, they are a treasure. These are the homes of the cochineal, a tiny scale insect. The Aztecs learned that if you harvested these insects and crushed them, they produced a red dye of unparalleled brilliance and permanence. This crimson, or carmine, was more valuable than gold. It was used to dye the ceremonial robes of emperors and high priests, to paint their sacred codices, and to create brilliant cosmetics. The cactus, in addition to being a grocery store, was also a bug ranch. It's a slightly morbid way to get the color red, but you can't argue with the results. After the Spanish conquest, cochineal dye became one of the most valuable exports from the New World, second only to silver. You look at the formidable spiky plant with a newfound respect. It is a perfect example of the Aztec ability to see potential everywhere. They looked at a dangerous spiny cactus and saw not an obstacle but a multi-purpose resource, a delicious vegetable, a sweet fruit, a sour spice, and the host for an insect that could produce the color of blood and fire. It was a whole economy, a whole cuisine, a whole art supply store, all in one spiky package. You drift away from the spiky, formidable nopal cactus, the memory of its sour fruit and secret crimson treasure adding another layer to your understanding of this complex world. As you continue your journey, a subtle change begins to occur. In the eastern sky, the deep velvety black is softening to a charcoal gray. The brightest stars have begun to fade, and a cool, damp mist is rising from the surface of the water, swirling in ghostly tendrils around the canoe. The night is ending. With the first hint of dawn, the atmosphere on the canals begins to shift. The deep, sleepy silence of the night is replaced by a growing sense of purpose. It's the start of the morning commute, but instead of the sound of car horns and distant sirens, the air fills with the gentle rhythmic splash of paddles and the soft calls of boatmen greeting each other in the half-light. You hear the occasional disgruntled squawk from a caged turkey who is clearly not a morning person. Your guide is no longer aimlessly exploring. His movements become more directed, his poling more powerful. He steers the canoe into a wider, more central canal, and you realize you have joined a procession. From the smaller side channels, other canoes begin to emerge, all heading in the same direction, back towards the city. And these canoes are laden with the bounty of the gardens. These are the produce delivery trucks of the 16th century, the lifeblood of Tenochtitlan. They are piled so high with the night's harvest that it's a miracle of balance that they don't tip over. It's like watching a floating farmer's market drift past you in the morning mist. One canoe is filled with a mountain of green maize, its fresh, sweet scent perfuming the air. Another is a blaze of orange, carrying a massive cargo of the cempasúchil flowers you saw earlier, destined for a temple or a funeral rite. A third is a carefully stacked pyramid of dark green squash, glossy chilies, and plump red tomatoes. What's most striking is the artistry of it all. The produce isn't just tossed into the boats. It's arranged with a palpable sense of pride. The maize is stacked in neat, interlocking rows. The flowers are bundled into beautiful bouquets. The vegetables are sorted by color and size, creating a vibrant, edible mosaic. A well-loaded canoe was a form of advertising, a testament to the skill and success of the farmer. It was part produce delivery, part parade float. You've got to make your maize look good if you want to beat the competition in the next canal over. Your guide falls into line with the other boats, and you become part of this silent, purposeful flotilla. The journey is the reverse of the one you took hours ago. The wild, fertile smells of the chinampas begin to recede, slowly being replaced by the scent of wood smoke as you draw nearer to the city. The great urban center, which was just a collection of faint lights when you left it, now begins to take shape in the growing dawn, its pyramids and palaces dark silhouettes against the lightening sky. This daily waterborne procession was the foundation of the Aztec economy. Economists and historians continued to debate the exact nature of this economy. Was it a pure free market, where these individual farmers would haggle and compete, setting their own prices for their goods? Or was it a more complex and controlled tributary system where a significant portion of this harvest was not for sale, but was owed as tribute to the emperor or the local temple, with only the surplus available for the farmer to trade for his own family's needs? The truth is likely a complex blend of both, a system of obligation and opportunity. For now, all you see is the quiet dignity of the work. Men and women pull their heavily laden canoes with a practiced, steady rhythm, their faces calm and focused in the cool morning air. They are carrying more than just food. They are carrying the energy of the sacred mud, the captured sunlight and water that will fuel the empire for another day. Your destination is the same as theirs. The great market, where this incredible bounty will be unloaded, traded, and transformed into the meals that will feed a nation. The sky is now a soft pearly gray, and the city of Tenochtitlan is awake. The canals have become crowded, bustling highways. Your guide navigates the traffic with an effortless expertise, his pole finding purchase in the muddy bottom in a series of quick, efficient movements. You are no longer in the agricultural zone or the quiet residential canals. You are in the commercial heart of the empire. The buildings are larger, the landings are more frequent, and the water is thick with canoes of every size and description. Your guide steers your small vessel towards a massive stone-lined basin, a nexus where several large canals converge. This is the harbor of the legendary Tlatelolco market. And as your canoe glides into this bustling port, The scene that opens up before you is staggering. It's less a farmer's market and more like a small country that has decided to have a national garage sale every single day. The sheer scale of it, the noise, the smells, the sheer number of people, is an assault on the senses. It makes a modern shopping mall on Black Friday look like a quiet corner library. This was the economic center of the known world for the people of this land. On a typical day, some 60,000 people would gather here to buy, sell, and trade. The market itself is a vast, open plaza, so large that the Spanish conquistadors who first saw it claimed you could fit the entire city of Salamanca within its borders. The plaza is already teeming with people, a swirling, vibrant mass of humanity, and the air hums with the sound of thousands of conversations, a dull roar of commerce and community, spoken in the Nahuatl tongue. From your vantage point in the canoe, you can see the beginnings of the market's incredible organization. While the Spanish accounts marvel at the market size, archaeologists still debate the exact layout and organization of the Tlatelolco marketplace. Was it a chaotic free-for-all, or was it, as the chroniclers suggest, a highly ordered space with specific streets and sections for each type of commodity? From what you can see, order seems to prevail. There are long rows of stalls, each shaded by simple cloth awnings. One section seems to be dedicated entirely to pottery, with endless stacks of red and brown earthenware pots, plates, and figurines. Further on, you see the vibrant colors of the textile merchants, their stalls draped with beautifully woven cotton blankets decorated with intricate geometric patterns. The air is a dizzying cocktail of smells. The fresh green scent of the produce arriving from the chinampas now mingles with 1,000 other aromas. There's the savory, mouth-watering smell of food being cooked over charcoal braziers, the scent of roasting maize, of rich stews bubbling in clay pots, of fish being grilled with chili and epazote. There's the sharp, sweet smell of copal incense drifting from a small shrine. There's the earthy smell of dust from the plaza, the musky scent of animal enclosures holding live turkeys and the hairless Xolo dogs, and the faint, coppery tang of the butcher's section. And you can buy anything here, absolutely anything. Need a turkey? Got it. A sack of beans or a pound of chili peppers? Of course. A finely crafted obsidian dagger with a razor-sharp edge? That stall is right next to the guy selling sandals. You could buy precious green jadeite jewelry, brilliant turquoise mosaics, bundles of exotic iridescent feathers from the southern jungles, tools, herbs, medicines, salt, animal skins, and building supplies. It was a true one-stop shop for all your Aztec needs. Amidst all this vibrant chaos, there was a strict sense of order. The market had its own dedicated police force, constantly patrolling the aisles. And at one end of the plaza sat a courthouse, where a panel of 12 judges presided. If a seller was caught using false weights, or if a dispute broke out between a buyer and a merchant, the case was heard and settled immediately, right there on the spot. Justice was swift, public, and decisive. It's like having a customer service dispute resolved by the Supreme Court, instantly. It was a system designed to ensure fairness and trust, the twin pillars upon which this entire vast economic engine was built. Your journey from the serene, silent gardens has brought you to this, the loud, beating human heart of the empire. Your canoe bobs gently in the crowded harbor of Tlatelolco, a small, quiet island in a sea of overwhelming sensory information. From this vantage point, you continue to watch the life of the market unfold. Farmers are unloading their precious cargo, carrying it in baskets and on their backs into the sprawling plaza. Merchants are shouting, customers are haggling, and the whole place thrums with a powerful, life-affirming energy. Your guide, who has been silently observing the scene, now points towards a specific stall set up right near the edge of the water. It's the stall of a Chinampa farmer, their canoe now empty and tied to a post. The stall is a beautiful display of the abundance you journeyed through during the night. neat stacks of corn, baskets of shiny chilies, and bundles of fragrant herbs. But your guide is pointing to a specific pile of fruit. At first, you are not impressed. Among the vibrant colors of the other produce, this fruit looks like the world's most boring offering. It's large and oval-shaped with rough, scruffy, brownish-gray skin. It looks like a kiwi that's been working out, or perhaps just a very sad, lumpy potato. It has absolutely zero curb appeal. You can't imagine anyone getting excited about it. But then a wealthy-looking customer, a merchant perhaps, dressed in a finely embroidered cotton cloak, stops at the stall. He barters with the farmer for a moment, and then the farmer picks up one of the dull brown fruits. With the same kind of sharp obsidian blade you saw earlier, the farmer slices the fruit in half lengthwise. And once again the Chinampas reveal their secret magic. The inside is a stunning, vibrant, almost impossibly beautiful salmon orange color. It's the color of a tropical sunset, of ripe papaya, of a perfect cantaloupe, all rolled into one. The flesh is thick and completely seedless, except for a single large almond-shaped seed in the very center, which is a glossy, polished black. It is another one of the Aztec "don't judge a book by its cover" fruits. The outside is all business, but the inside is a party. This is the mami sapote. It was one of the most beloved and prized fruits of the ancient Americas. Its texture, you can just tell by looking at it, is impossibly creamy and smooth, with no fibers at all. The scent that wafts from the cut fruit is rich, sweet, and complex, a unique blend that smells like baked sweet potato, pumpkin pie, honey, and a faint, delicious hint of almond. The taste would be just as decadent. It's not a light, juicy, refreshing fruit. It is a dense, rich, all-encompassing experience. The flavor matches the aroma, a sweet, custardy taste of pumpkin and sweet potato with notes of apricot and vanilla. It melts in your mouth. It is quite simply a dessert that grows on a tree. While we know mamey was a luxury fruit, archaeologists and historians debate its exact role in the Aztec tribute system. Was it so prized that certain Chinampa districts were required to pay their taxes to the emperor in the form of these perfect, creamy fruits? And if so, how did the stern imperial tax collectors who patrolled this very market assess their quality? Did they have a checklist for ripeness, for color, for flavor? Like all things from the Chinampas, the mamey was used to its full potential. The single large glossy seed called a pixtil was not discarded. It was roasted and ground into a powder. This powder was then used to add a rich, bitter, almond-like flavor to their chocolate drinks, making the already prized beverage even more complex and delicious. It was the 16th century equivalent of adding a fancy flavored syrup to your hot cocoa. The Aztecs really knew how to live. Furthermore, the seed could be pressed to extract a rich, fragrant oil known as sapayul oil. This oil was a prized cosmetic, used by both men and women as a hairdressing to add shine and softness, and as a moisturizer to protect the skin from the intense high-altitude sun. You watch as the farmer wraps the two halves of the mamey in fresh corn husks and hands them to the customer, who departs with his treasure. The farmer has just sold a single fruit that is simultaneously a dessert, a drink flavoring, and a beauty product. It is the perfect embodiment of the Chinampas themselves. From a humble, unassuming exterior comes a wealth of rich, vibrant, and complex treasures. You remain at the edge of the market, the canoe a floating observation deck on the world's most vibrant commercial hub. You've seen the end of the journey for the produce, the culmination of a night's travel and a season's work. But now, your mind drifts back to the gardens, to the silent, fertile islands where all this abundance was born. How did it all work in rhythm? How did the farmers choreograph this endless parade of food? The answer lay in their deep understanding of time, as codified in their intricate calendars. The life of every Aztec, from the emperor to the humblest Chinampa farmer, was governed by the Huitzilopochtli, a 365-day solar calendar. This was not just for marking time. It was a divine script for living a detailed farmer's almanac that dictated when to plant, when to harvest, and when to hold the sacred festivals that honored the gods of rain and maize. It even had more gods and a slightly higher chance of things going badly if the harvest was late. For the Chinampa farmer, however, there was no true off-season. Mainland farmers who relied on rainfall had their years sharply divided by the wet and dry seasons. But here, with a limitless supply of water from the canals, the gardens were a 365-day-a-year operation. It was the ultimate gig economy, and the gig never, ever ended. Still, the year had its distinct rhythms. The dry season, which ran roughly from October to May, was a time of cool, crisp air and brilliant sunny days. This was the time for planting crops that were sensitive to the torrential downpours of summer. Tomatoes, a wide variety of chilies, and many of the flowers that required careful water management would be started in the Chapin seed beds and transplanted now. The constant work of dredging the canals to add fresh mud to the Chinampas was often done during this period, reinforcing the islands and preparing them for the intense growth to come. Then came the rainy season, from June to September. The skies would open up for a few hours each afternoon, delivering a drenching, life-giving rain. This was the season of maize. The Chinampas would be a sea of green, the tall stalks of corn reaching for the sky, their roots happily soaking up the abundant moisture. This was also when the squashes and beans would thrive, their vines sprawling over the rich, damp earth. The canals would be flushed with fresh water, and the entire ecosystem would seem to hum with an intense, vibrant energy. Climatologists and historians still debate the precise impact of multi-year climate cycles, like El Niño events, on the Chinampa system. While these gardens were brilliantly insulated from normal seasonal droughts, how did they cope when a prolonged dry spell lowered the entire lake system? Or, conversely, how did they survive an unusually severe rainy season that brought the risk of a catastrophic flood, threatening to wash away their precious, man-made islands? Their dike and causeway systems offered some protection, but they were still living in a delicate balance with forces far greater than themselves. Despite the Chinampa's incredible productivity, life was not always a state of endless abundance. The Aztecs even had a name for the period in late spring, just before the main maize harvest was ready. It was the hungry season. The stores of dried and preserved foods from the previous year were dwindling, and the new crops were not yet mature. During this time, the people relied more heavily on the hardiest of the Chinampa crops, like the protein-rich amaranth, and on wild foods foraged from the lake. And of course, on those nutritious, if not exactly glamorous, algae cakes, the Tenochtitlan, that you saw being harvested so long ago. We've all been there, staring into the pantry a day before payday, trying to get creative. As the sun climbs higher, casting its first direct golden rays into the market plaza, you reflect on this incredible cycle. It was a system of constant, overlapping activity, a masterpiece of planning and foresight. From the seed in the nursery to the stall in the market, it was all one continuous, beautiful, and deeply sacred process, a partnership between the people and their lake, guided by the sun, the moon, and the steady turning of the calendar. The sun is fully risen now, flooding the great plaza of Tlatelolco with a brilliant high-altitude light. The market is in full swing, a symphony of commerce and human connection. Everything seems perfect, a testament to a civilization at the zenith of its power. A system so finely tuned it feels like it could run forever, but you feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The sunlight seems harsher than it should, casting sharp, anxious shadows. There's a strange, uneasy feeling in the air, a kind of collective indigestion, as if the entire empire ate something that didn't agree with it. Your journey through the night has been a tour of this timeless, perfect system. But time is not a perfect, repeating circle. It is also an arrow. And for the Aztec world in these first years of the 16th century, that arrow is pointing towards a catastrophic, unimaginable future. The people don't know it yet, not consciously, but there are whispers. There are signs. For the last 10 years, things have been getting weird. Historians fiercely debate the authenticity of these omens. Were they real events later interpreted through the dark lens of history? Or were they stories created after the fall, a way for a devastated people to explain the inexplicable, to frame their destruction as a fate written in the stars? Whatever their origin, these stories paint a picture of an empire gripped by a growing, unnamed dread. According to the accounts, the first omen appeared 10 years before the arrival of the strangers. It was a tongue of fire, a pillar of light that appeared in the eastern sky after midnight, bleeding and burning until the sun rose and extinguished it. It was seen as a terrible portent, a sign from the heavens that the world's familiar order was about to be broken. Then a few years later, the great temple of Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun, the spiritual center of the empire, spontaneously burst into flames. There was no storm, no lightning, no torch. It simply began to burn from within its wooden beams. The people rushed with clay pots of water, but the more water they threw on the flames, the higher they leaped. The temple, the symbol of Aztec power, was reduced to ashes. It's the kind of event that would make even the most laid-back emperor start to stress eat. The omens came from the water, too. One day, with no wind and no earthquake, the waters of Lake Texcoco became enraged. The lake seemed to boil, and massive waves rose up, crashing over the dikes and flooding a part of Tenochtitlan, sweeping away houses and drowning their inhabitants. The lake that gave them life, the lake they had so masterfully tamed, had turned against them. There were omens in the sounds of the night. People began to hear the voice of a woman, weeping and crying out in the darkness, wandering the empty streets of the city after midnight. "Oh, my children," she would cry, "we must flee. Where can I take you?" It was a ghostly, terrifying lament for a tragedy that had not yet happened. The first whispers of the legend of La Llorona, the weeping woman. And there was the strangest omen of all. Some fishermen out on the lake caught a bizarre ash-colored bird that looked something like a crane, but on the crown of its head, there was a strange circular mirror. They brought the creature to the emperor, Moctezuma II. When he looked into the mirror, he saw the night sky. The second time he looked, he saw a vision of a vast army of men, armed for war, riding on the backs of creatures that looked like giant deer. He sent for his priests and soothsayers, but by the time they arrived, the vision and the bird itself had vanished. A bird mirror portal is not exactly what you want to see on a Tuesday morning. You sit in your canoe, the roar of the market suddenly seeming distant and meaningless. The sun on your skin feels cold. A shadow has fallen over this golden city, a premonition of an ending that no one here can truly comprehend. The farmers in the market continue to sell their perfect produce, unaware that the calendar that has governed their lives for centuries is about to be violently, irrevocably broken. The omens, as it turned out, were not wrong. In 1519, the strangers arrived from the east just as the prophecies foretold. They were men with pale skin and hair on their faces, encased in shining metal. They wielded weapons of thunder and fire, and they rode upon the backs of giant, deer-like creatures. The vision from the mirrored bird had walked out of a dream and into reality. The story of the conquest itself is one of war, disease, and politics, a brutal and complex clash of two worlds. But our story is not about the fall of temples or the death of emperors. It is about the water. It is about the gardens. And for the Chinampas, the arrival of the Spanish was the beginning of a slow, inexorable death. After a bloody siege, Tenochtitlan fell in 1521. The Spanish, as the new rulers, decided to build their capital, Mexico City, directly on the ruins of the Aztec metropolis. But they were Europeans, men of a dry land tradition. They saw the lake not as a source of life, but as a threat. The new arrivals saw a city built on water and, instead of admiring its intricate genius, they mostly just worried about getting their boots wet and dealing with the seasonal floods. The Aztec system of dikes and causeways was a masterpiece of water management, but the Spanish solution was far simpler, more direct, and ultimately utterly catastrophic. They decided to get rid of the water. This began one of the most ambitious and destructive engineering projects in history, the desagüe, the great drainage of the Valley of Mexico. It was a project that would last for centuries, a relentless war waged against the 5 lakes. Environmental historians continue to debate the primary motivation behind it. Was it a purely practical, albeit misguided attempt at flood control, or was there also a symbolic dimension, a conscious effort to destroy the unique aquatic landscape that was the very foundation of Aztec identity, replacing it with the tamed, European-style world of solid ground? The first victims were the canals within the city itself. Once the arteries of Aztec life, they were now seen as inconvenient obstacles. You can't, after all, easily navigate a horse-drawn cart through a waterway. They were seen as unsanitary, disorderly. And so, using the rubble from the dismantled Aztec pyramids and temples, the Spanish began to fill them in, paving them over to create the solid, dusty streets of a European city. It was considered a major upgrade, which is a bit like paving over Venice to improve the traffic flow. With the canals blocked and the great dikes falling into disrepair, the delicate hydrological balance of the valley was broken. The work of the desagüe began in earnest, with massive canals and tunnels being cut through the mountains to provide an outlet for the lake water. And slowly, year by year, the waters began to recede. The effect on the Chinampas was devastating. The islands that had been built in the shallow freshwater lakes of Chalco and Xochimilco suddenly found themselves farther and farther from the waterline. The canals that surrounded them grew shallow, then became stagnant, muddy ditches, and then dried up completely. The brilliant, self-fertilizing, self-irrigating system was severed from its source. It turns out that a floating garden needs to, float, or at least be very near the water. The rich black mud, once perpetually moist, began to dry and crack under the sun. The mineral salts from the deeper soil, once held in check by the constant presence of fresh water, began to rise to the surface, poisoning the fertile earth. The willows, the ahuejote trees, with their thirsty roots now unable to reach the lake, began to wither and die. Without their living root systems, the Chinampas began to erode, their precious soil blowing away as dust on the wind. The paradise was turning into a dust bowl. The sound of the frogs grew fainter each year. The axolotl, the sacred god salamander, vanished from the drying mud. The forgotten fruits, the tejocotes and sapotes, their trees untended, began to disappear. A world was ending not with a bang, but with the quiet, relentless sound of receding water. The dust of the past begins to settle. The images of destruction, of the waters receding and the gardens drying out, fade from your mind. Your journey is not quite over. The canoe you are in seems to have changed, morphed through the centuries. It's no longer a simple, slender dugout. You are now resting in a large, flat-bottomed boat called a traginera, its wooden frame covered by an arched roof, and painted in colors so bright they could make a rainbow feel insecure. Names like Lupita or Viva Xochimilco are painted in bold, cheerful letters on the arch. The silence has also vanished, replaced by a vibrant, festive cacophony. A boat full of mariachi musicians drifts past, their trumpets and violins filling the air with a powerful, joyous song. You are sharing the canal with dozens of other colorful boats, filled with laughing families and tourists. Vendors in smaller canoes paddle up alongside, offering grilled corn, cold drinks, and woven blankets. This is Xochimilco, a southern borough of modern Mexico City. It is the last echo, the living ghost of the great Aztec water world. After centuries of relentless draining, the 5 Great Lakes are gone. Lake Texcoco is now the site of Mexico City's international airport. The causeways are buried beneath 8 lanes of roaring traffic. But here, in the old freshwater lands of the south, a small piece of the labyrinth has survived. These are the last of the Chinampas. Designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, this network of canals and islands is a fragile, beautiful, and profoundly complicated link to the past. It's part historical treasure, part floating party. You can buy a bouquet of flowers grown on a 500-year-old farm and a selfie stick in the same transaction. Some of the Chinampas are still worked by the descendants of the original farmers. They grow flowers, marigolds, carnations, and poinsettias, and vegetables like lettuce, spinach, and cilantro for the insatiable appetite of the megalopolis that surrounds them. You can see the tall, graceful forms of the ahuejote willows still standing guard along the banks, their roots still holding this ancient land together. The principles of the system, the magic of the mud still work, but the pressures of the modern world are immense. The water in the canals is no longer pristine spring water, but is mostly treated wastewater from the city, a fact that poses a constant challenge for the farmers and the ecosystem. The urban sprawl of Mexico City, one of the largest cities on Earth, presses in on all sides. Some Chinampas have been abandoned and are overgrown with weeds. Others have been illegally sold and paved over for houses or, more commonly, for soccer fields. And strangest of all, new modern myths have been layered on top of the old ones. Your boat might drift past one particularly unsettling island, its trees festooned with hundreds of old weathered plastic dolls. They hang from the branches like strange, grim fruit, their plastic eyes staring blankly, some of their limbs missing. This is the infamous Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls. Legend says a former resident found a drowned girl in the canal and began hanging dolls to appease her spirit. Now it's an accidental, profoundly creepy art installation and a major tourist draw. It's a good reminder that even in paradise there's always room for a little bit of nightmare fuel. Conservationists and urban planners are in a constant, fierce debate about the future of Xochimilco. Should it be a perfectly preserved museum piece, an ecological rescue project that seeks to restore the past? Or should it be allowed to evolve as a living part of the city, adapting to the needs of the people who call it home, even if that means more soccer fields and tourist attractions? There are no easy answers. For now, this place remains. It is a testament to the resilience of both a landscape and a culture. Despite everything, the water still flows. The gardens are still green. The boats still glide through the canals. It is a faded, compromised, and noisy reflection of the world you journeyed through in the night. But the reflection is still there. It has not vanished completely. You close your eyes for just a moment, taking in the lively sounds and smells of modern Xochimilco. When you open them again, everything has changed once more. The sounds of the mariachi bands and the laughing tourists begin to fade, as if someone is slowly turning down the volume on the 21st century. The noisy gasoline motor of a nearby boat sputters and falls silent. Your brightly colored party boat dissolves, reforming into the simple, humble dugout canoe you started in. You are back with your silent guide. You are back in the past. The sun, which was high in the sky over the Tlatelolco market, is now dipping low, preparing to rest behind the dark, sleeping forms of the volcanoes. The journey is ending at the same time of day it began. You are gliding through the canals of the pristine 16th century Chinampas one last time. The water is clean and clear, perfectly reflecting the sky, which is a breathtaking masterpiece of orange, pink, and deep violet. The sunset is so spectacular, so all-encompassing, it feels like the world is holding its breath. It's the kind of sunset that makes you feel very small and very quiet in the best possible way. The air is cool and still. The only sound is the gentle rhythmic splash of your guide's pole, the first tentative croaks of the evening frogs, and the distant, lonely cry of a heron returning to its roost. You glide past the chinampas, their surfaces a lush, deep green, the cornstalks casting long shadows in the dying light. You see a lone farmer poling his own canoe home towards a small thatched hut, the smoke from his cooking fire rising in a thin, straight line into the colorful sky. This was a world in balance. The Aztec concept of truth and art was beautifully captured by the phrase in Xochitl, in Huitzilopochtli, which means flower and song. To them, poetry, beauty, and the very meaning of life were found in this combination. The chinampas were the literal source of this philosophy. They were the gardens that produced the flowers, the Xochitl, and they produced the food that gave life and strength to the people who created the songs, the Huitzilopochtli. This entire ecosystem was not just a farm, it was the physical foundation for Aztec art, philosophy, and their understanding of the cosmos. Ultimately, the story of the chinampas leaves us with a question that scholars and modern societies still grapple with. How can a civilization, how can we, create a system of immense abundance that exists in harmony with its environment, rather than one that is based on its destruction? The floating gardens of Lake Texcoco are a brilliant, shimmering example that such a thing is possible. But their fate is also a tragic cautionary tale of how quickly and completely such a world can be lost when a new way of thinking, one that does not understand or value that delicate balance, takes over. Your long night on the water is coming to a close. You have seen an island born from mud and sticks. You have met a god disguised as a smiling salamander. You have learned that the sweetest fruits sometimes hide behind the plainest masks, and that chocolate pudding does in fact grow on trees. All in all, a pretty productive and peaceful evening. Your guide poles the canoe towards a quiet, willow-lined bank. The journey is over. The last sliver of the sun disappears behind the mountains, and the first stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, their reflections twinkling in the still, dark water before you. Word count, 1051. And so, your journey through the floating gardens comes to a gentle and quiet end. The canoe rests now, its wooden hull nudging softly against the earthen shore, and the silence of the ancient evening settles all around you. The vivid colors of the sunset have faded from the water, leaving only the deep, calm reflections of the first few stars in a sky of velvet indigo. The air is cool and heavy with the scent of damp earth and the distant sweet fragrance of night-blooming flowers, a final peaceful perfume from a world now lost to time. There is nothing left to see, nothing left to learn, only the lingering feeling of peace from this place. A sense of profound and simple balance. Let the rhythmic memory of the guide's pole in the water guide your breathing. A gentle push, and a long, slow glide. Feel the gentle rocking of the canoe, a soothing, steady motion that invites you to let go of the day. The story is over now. All that is left is this quiet, this darkness, and the soft, steady feeling of drifting slowly, peacefully, and safely into a deep and restful sleep. Let the water hold you, let the silence comfort you. Just drift now and dream.